Hi all. So today we're going to look at the first 150 lines of Oedipus the King, which is originally titled Oedipus Rex. You know, the author of this play is the great Greek classical tragedian Sophocles. So now, what is the context and dramatic setting of Oedipus Rex? You find the priest of Zeus entering along with the chorus of Theban elders. And so let's focus on what happens as soon as the chorus enters. It enters after the priest and the citizens exit the stage. The chorus represents the moral, religious, and emotional conscience of Thebes, and it speaks for both themselves and the collective despair of the city. They have a dramatic function to perform. The chorus establishes the religious and moral context of the crisis. It conveys the emotional weight of the plague upon Thebes. It sets up the divine intervention theme that will drive the plot further. And the chorus do not speak only for themselves, but they also speak for the collective despair of Thebes. The chorus is paradox. That's to say, the structure and the purpose. So what is the structure of the paradox? You find that there is a description of the plague here that has struck Thebes. There is an invocation to gods and there is an appeal for help. So this also has a dramatic purpose of its own. And so the paradox follows a structured pattern of invocation, description of the plague, appeal, and emotional conclusion. So let's focus on the key content of this chorus. There is a direct appeal to Zeus and Apollo for help. There's a recall of the oracle from Delphi that they had received long ago. Along with this, there is an expression of terror at the prophecy, and there is a graphic description of the plague's effects. So now, we find that their hearts twist in anxiety, a powerful image of civic trauma that's portrayed here. Now, let's focus on the invocation to Zeus and Apollo. So the chorus appeal both of these gods. Zeus, we all know, is the king of gods, and Apollo is the god of prophecy. So the chorus appeal begins directly to the gods, especially to Zeus and Apollo, as we have seen earlier. They express their terror at the Delphic prophecy, but that is to say the prophecy from Pytho, that is Delphi. So they recall the voice of the oracle that brought the plague upon Thebes. So their hearts, as we saw in the previous slide, seems to be twisting in anxiety, and that's a powerful image of civic trauma we saw. And now the chorus seems to be questioning the divine will. They question the purpose of this plague. They say, why has the God not spoken so far? Or why has the God spoken this way? Then there is an obligation. What new obligation or punishment is coming? Then they focus on the catastrophe. What unknown or recurring catastrophe does this oracle portend? So they seem to be mulling over all of these. Now, besides Zeus and Apollo, they also invoke the protectress trio, that is to say, the goddess Athena, Artemis, and Apollo. So, they have already done Zeus and Apollo. They have invoked Zeus and Apollo. Now they seem to be again making a plea to Apollo. So we all know that Athena is the goddess of wisdom who is involved in warfare. So according to the lines from the text, she is the goddess of wisdom who defends their city with her strategic mind. And then we find Artemis, the goddess of childbirth, who shields them, especially their women and children. Okay, and she's the protector of maidens. Then we have Apollo, who is addressed as the healer and archer, and they're requesting Apollo to drive away the plague with his arrows. So now let's focus on the plague that's wrought upon so much of havoc in Thebes. The plague's devastating effects are in different spectrum. So we find that the natural order is collapsed. There's nothing growing in the earth. The land is sterile. There's a reproductive failure. Women cannot give birth and the wombs are barren. There are violent deaths all over. And the deaths are compared to birds. People die like birds too quickly, even for the funeral rites or the last rites. And what about the decaying bodies? Because there's death all over, and there are bodies, dead bodies all over. So there is a kind of a stench also that must have been emanating from there. So the dead bodies lie unburied, spreading more disease. Okay, and when such things happen, do you think people will be happy? No. There is the whole city is filled with wailing, especially of the wives and the elderly. So there is a kind of a social breakdown. Nobody is focusing on anything else. And not just that, there is a religious crisis also. We find that the priestly functions become impossible. So the plague's effects symbolize the collapse of social, natural, and religious order in Thebes. And this recurrent imagery creates the sense that the order has collapsed entirely. Now, so at this juncture, the people of Thebes, they make a plea that's a cosmic plea for divine intervention. So the chorus's paradox climaxes with a desperate cosmic plea calling upon the major gods to end the plague that has devastated Thebes. So they call Zeus, as we have seen earlier. They ask Zeus to send thunderbolt and fire to destroy the plague. Then they again call for Apollo and they ask him to shoot the plague with his arrows so that the afflicted can be healed. They are praying to Artemis, asking her to unleash purifying flames to cleanse the land. And they go to Dionysus, ask for her help. They're asking her to come with torchlight and repel Ares, that's the plague god. So they understand that not just one God, but only a combination of divine powers of heaven can heal, can be healing, can bring back childbirth to normalcy, can put down fire, and that the ecstasy of death can be pushed out. So here we see that Oedipus makes a dramatic entrance. And Oedipus is the human substitute for the divine intervention that the chorus is seeking. And he seems to be bringing upon salvation through reason. And we find him as a confident king who enters in a very strong manner. Yes, he is limping. Why is he limping? As his name suggests, he had an edema in his feet. Oedipus, Edi. Edi means inflammation or edema. Pus means feet. So, and that edema in his feet had caused damage to his feet and therefore he starts limping. Okay. So, despite his limping, he seems to be strong, confident and kingly, especially after these people have invoked the gods. And as soon as he comes there, after listening to the people, he assures the people prayers will be fulfilled if they obey him. And he promises to solve the plague by finding Lysis' murderer. And not just that, he goes a step further and takes up the role of the priest king, claiming divine authority over himself. So we find that this human takes up or wears the mantle of reason and he behaves as if reason will be able to conquer fate along with human will. And so he is a contrast to the chorus that represents ritual and emotion. So there is a foreshadowing of tension between human intellect and divine mystery that you find here. And there is a dramatic irony that is also created, that the audience knows his fate and they know that the fate awaits him and that there is a lurking danger that he's going to combat soon. Chorus is seen as ritualistic, emotional, and helpless, whereas Oedipus is logical, action oriented, and confident. So, Oedipus he behaves like someone who believes that reason and human will can conquer fate. So, what is Oedipus's public proclamation now? So, he's standing there, he's assuring the chorus. Now, what is this proclamation or the royal announcement? He first proclaims himself to be a stranger to this crime. He says, I do not know what happened. I do not know how King Laius passed away. I do not know who murdered him. But then there is a dramatic irony there. Yet, I will avenge Laius' death as my own father's. Please note, there is some kind of a hunch in him that makes him tell that he will avenge Laius' death as his own father's, and that's another dramatic irony. So I offer immunity to confessors, and he says, so there is a kind of a reward that he proclaims, and he rewards for those who provide information. So he says, and then there is a threatening also. Reward is there, there is a threatening also. He says, anyone who hides the criminal will face severe punishment. So let's analyze this proclamation. We find Oedipus being established as the rational hero who believes reason can conquer fate. And he assumes the role of priest-king, promising salvation to the city. He sets up the investigation method that will ultimately reveal his own guilt. So, what is the tragic irony that you find here? And that's the most important tragic irony. Oedipus vows to find Laius' murderer while unknowingly he is going to search for himself, which we will get to know a little later in detail. So, whatever he says now, whatever he has pronounced now, or whatever curse that he is about to give is a self-destructive curse, because it's again going to affect him. And we will get to know about it a little later. So the curse that he pronounces is, may the murderer waste away in agony. May he be shunned by all, and may he receive no fertility of land or womb. So this is a very, very powerful dramatic irony employed by Sophocles. It's powerful instance of dramatic irony, especially in the Greek tragedy. Oedipus unknowingly curses himself. The audience is aware of his true identity. So there is a self-destructive pattern that you see here. Curse becomes his own fate, okay, tragically. And that is symbolic of his tragic flaw also. So he kind of inflicts agony upon himself. So it's a self-inflicted agony that parallels his crime. So you find that this curse gets fulfilled at the later stage. I don't want to reveal it now, so I'm stopping here. Perhaps if you pause and have a look at it, you will know about it. Then there is a divine alignment that takes place. So Oedipus seems to be aligning himself with the gods, and he employs a kind of an investigation method also. Now Oedipus acts with Apollo, claiming divine authority. And not just that, as told you, he says that he will avenge Laius' murder as if it were his own father's. So he represents himself as Laius' heir in investigating his murder. And he frames the investigation as serving thieves directly. So he says, when I'm investigating the murder, it means I'm serving the city directly. So what investigation method does he employ? Now, he does not believe in rumors, rather he seeks factual evidence, and he offers immunity and rewards for information also. And he plans to consult Tiresias for divine insight. So this is something greater. So we find that Oedipus' investigation method dismisses rumors. So we find that in the text, we find the chorus adds, there were old rumors. Laius was perhaps killed by travelers, and Oedipus dismisses rumors. He wants facts, okay? And he is depending upon only factual evidence. So there is a kind of a rational investigation where reasons seem to be predominating. So it undertakes a systematic approach to facts, and he also claims to the public about his investigation and the investigation method. So now he wants to seek the help of Tiresias, and he arrives. This Tiresias is a blind prophet, and his arrival seems to be a turning point in the play. There is an investigation, and this investigation will lead on to a tragic revelation. So the prophet enters, and this prophet Tiresias, who is a blind prophet, is described as a seer of truth. Ironically, he's godlike, one who sees more clearly than any mortal. Despite being blind, he sees more clearly. And so, from prayer, there is an inquiry that the play moves on to. So it signals transition from speculation to revelation, and it represents the bridge between mortal inquiry and divine revelation. And this particular scene has its own dramatic function to perform. It marks the beginning of Oedipus's downfall upon revealing the truth. It creates dramatic irony as Oedipus remains blind to his own identity. Please note, that's his flaw. That's his tragic flaw. And he introduces tragic knowledge, that is truth, as both revelation and destruction. So in this scene, we find a kind of a paradox of sight. Tiresias, who is physically blind, has a spiritual sight. But Oedipus, who is physically sighted, or who has physical sight, lacks spiritual sight, and he is spiritually blind. So the paradox is a mirror of the condition of Thebes. The chorus entrance song reveals the spiritual and moral decay of Thebes through three key aspects. The first being the spiritual disease. As we saw earlier, there is a moral decay beneath the surface because people are not able to engage in religious rituals. There is a sacrilege of unavenged murder, and there is a political instability caused because of this, as well as there is an environmental sterility. Then you have the ritual desperation. There is a limitation of religious rituals. People make frantic and fragmented prayers, repetitive invocations are there, and these demonstrate their helplessness. Now, what about the gods? The gods seem to be silent. So there is a kind of a divine silence. No god seems to be intervening directly, but there is a human substitute for divine action. And that human substitute we all know is none other than Oedipus. Then this human agency emerges and the destiny unfolds. The plague is not merely physical, it reflects moral decay, sacrilege, political instability, and environmental sterility. So now let's look at Oedipus as a rational hero and a tragic victim simultaneously. We find that he's a tragic hero, but then he has certain qualities of a leader. He assumes role of priest king, promising salvation and exhibiting leadership skills. Now he is also very intelligent. He claims the ability to solve the mystery through logic. That's something amazing. And you find that he's got compassion. How do we know about it? Because he offers to protect the people, and he also goes further to say that he would reward people who give him information, or rather he would reward the informers. And then he comes up with so much of responsibility. A leader is always created during the crisis. So he takes action in crisis, and he promises to find Lysis' murderer. Now, on one side, you find him as a rational hero. On the other side, you find him as a tragic victim. He believes reason and human will can conquer fate, and that's his hubris. He is overconfident because he dismisses the rumors and wants only facts, and he's blind. He sees physically but is blind to his own identity. And above all, the fate looms over him, and it's his investigation that destroys him, fulfilling the prophecy which all of them feared earlier. So there's a central tension that's created between the chorus and Oedipus. The chorus, that's ritualistic, emotional, and helpless, is contrasted with Oedipus, who is logical, action-oriented, and confident. So this contrast foreshadows the central tension between human intellect and divine mystery. So now we also see that Sophocles employs dramatic irony as a core engine. You find that the audience is aware of Oedipus being the killer of Lais, and that he has married his own mother, and that the curse that he had proclaimed publicly will fall upon himself. So there is a shared knowledge. The basic facts about Lysis' death, the audience are well aware of, but Oedipus is unaware of. And so the character is ignorant. Oedipus believes he is investigating as a stranger, but he's not a stranger. He does not know his own identity. He thinks he can solve the mystery. So as we saw in the previous slide, a tragic tension is created. The audience watches helplessly as Oedipus approaches his fate. And this irony creates a moral weight to Oedipus's action. Now, what are the examples of heightened irony? Oedipus proclaims, "If he lives in my house, I may be punished as I curse him." And then he says, "I act on behalf of my father Lais." So this is the height of tragic irony, when the audience perceives the tragic reversal already unfolding very slowly. So the curse is a prophetic self-destruction. He says, "May the murderer waste away in agony. May he be shunned by all. May he receive no fertility of land or womb." Let's get deeper into this self-destructive curse. The cursed words are barrenness of crops and wombs, isolation and social destruction when he says, "May he be shunned by all." Then he says, wasting away in agony. That is to say, let him, first curse is that, may the murderer waste away in agony. So, eventually we find Oedipus fulfilling the fate. He is shunned by all the citizens. He is exiled from Thebes, and he blinds himself. So that's a self-inflicted agony. He wanders in spiritual sterility also. So what is the symbolic analysis of this self-destructive curse? There we have a dramatic irony. Oedipus unknowingly curses himself while believing he is pronouncing justice on somebody else. Then you have the prophecy being fulfilled also, so there is a prophetic fulfillment. The curse functions as a spoken prophecy that Oedipus brings upon himself. So there is a tragic justice also. The punishment fits the crime, and the hubris in seeking to know what was better left unknown. See, he should have left it unknown, but he goes farther to know the unknown. So now the chorus serves as a moral barometer. They express fear, morality, and divine truth. And the chorus also represents the collective fear of a city ruled by destiny. So now let's look at their collective fear. So as we saw, they are the emotional thermometer of Thebes. They sense danger without knowing the truth. And what is the religious context against which they speak? They seem to be providing divine perspective also to this situation, to this crisis. They maintain cultural memory of religious customs. That's very important to carry forward the culture. And then they serve as a moral compass because they represent ethical perspective and they serve as a contrast to Oedipus's rational approach, which we've already seen. Then they seem to be bridging the truth also, suggesting Tiresias as intermediary, facilitating connection between moral inquiry and divine revelation. So, now let's look at Tiresias and the paradox of sight. There is a physical sight versus spiritual blindness. Oedipus can physically see, but spiritually he is blind. So Tiresias' blindness, he is physically blind, but sees more clearly than any mortal. He represents the truth that Oedipus cannot perceive, and he symbolizes that truth comes through spiritual vision, not physical sight. On the contrary, you find Oedipus' sight. Looking at it, we find that though he is physically capable of seeing, he is blind to his own identity. And he represents the tragic victim of spiritual blindness in knowledge. And he exemplifies the paradox, that is to say, the more he searches, the more he misses the truth. And he is blind physically, but sees the truth. Who? Tiresias. But Oedipus sees physically, but is blind to his identity. Now, Sophocles' dramatic technique, you find that you have the human agency on one side who substitutes the divine authority, that is Oedipus, and he takes up rational mode of investigation. And on the other hand, you have the divine authority, that is to say, you have Apollo's mysterious silence. So there is a character contrast between the chorus and Oedipus, creating tension between emotional and rational responses. Then there is this dramatic irony also. The audience knows Oedipus is the killer, that he is seeking himself. And this heightens the tragic impact of his self-destructive curse. Then there is a divine mystery. People wonder, why is it that the gods are silent? Why do they remain silent? So this kind of creates a cosmic tension, and the human will confronts divine mystery. The more Oedipus asserts control, the more he walks into fate's net. So there is a kind of a tragic rhythm that's established. This is the progress of investigation that you see. Okay, there is the level, and as and when Oedipus moves towards it, he thinks he is controlling, but the more and more he seems to be controlling the situation, the more and more he seems to be entrapped into it. So the pattern of control that we see is Oedipus asserts control through his public proclamation. His investigation methods show confidence in human reason. He offers rewards and threats to uncover the truth. The more he searches, the deeper he falls into fate. And Tiresias' arrival marks the beginning of his downfall. His curse unknowingly condemns himself. So as we saw earlier, the more and more Oedipus moves towards his own control, the more and more he seems to be falling into fate's net. So what are the common themes of this particular scene, or lines from 1 to 150 of the original text? You find that the themes of knowledge and destruction are used here. There is tragic knowledge. Knowledge is used as a double-edged sword in Oedipus's quest. Tiresias' prophetic vision versus Oedipus's physical sight is also seen, that reveals tragic knowledge. Then knowledge of fate versus ignorance as blessing. So we know that ignorance is always a bliss. Now, all of these lead on to a kind of a destruction mechanism. Oedipus's curse upon himself unknowingly is a destruction mechanism. And then we know that the truth is a destructive force here. So the more and more he goes further to unearth truth, he seems to be engaging in a kind of a destructive force that shatters illusions. And we find that fate's inevitable retribution for knowledge is sought here. So truth is both a revelation and a destruction. So what are the significance of this play in Greek tragedy? or as a Greek tragedy. You find that there is a dramatic segment in Greek tragedy that establishes fundamental elements that define the tragic drama. So in Oedipus Rex also, or Oedipus the King also, that's established. First is the crisis. That's the plague that haunts Thebes and it's being introduced. Then the quest. There's a search for Lysistrata's murder. All of the Greek tragedies will have the quest too. There's a method that is adopted. And we find that Oedipus uses a rational investigation method. There is an emotional weight also. Chorus provides the moral context. Then there are the tragic seeds that are sown. You find the curse and pride. They cause the downfall. Then there is a revelation. Theresis signals the truth. And there is a divine silence. Gods are silent through the oracle. Then there is a tragic rhythm that's created. So we find that control asserts fate's net. And the control that's asserted leads Oedipus towards fate's net. So this is the tragic rhythm that is established. Okay. So now we find that here it's a wonderful dramatic construction, a masterpiece by Sophocles, because he introduced elements like the crisis, the plague, quest, hero's method of investigation. He established contradictions through God's silence or divine trap, chorus emotional weight, seeds of Oedipus's downfall that's caused through his curse and pride. Then we find that there is a tragic resolution that's been taken. There's an imminent revelation by Tiresias. And then there is a tragic rhythm also caused through asserting control leading on to fate's net. We also get to see the height of tragic irony, or rather dramatic irony. So this passage or these lines are one of the greatest dramatic segments in all Greek tragedy, because it introduces the crisis, establishes the quest, and sets into motion the tragic rhythm that consumes the hero. So Sophocles masterfully constructs a passage that contains all elements necessary for tragic development and resolution, creating a microcosm of the human condition and divine authority. So hope you understood what has been taught so far. Now, if you're really interested, please visit the link given here and take a quiz to test how much you have mastered through this video. Thank you one and all for watching this.